Hello, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. I'm Yael Shir, here with ILTV's Morning Briefing.
Following the Pittsburgh massacre that left 11 dead and 6 wounded, Israeli lawmakers from across the political spectrum have vowed to support both Reform and conservative Jews in their quest to gain equal status in the State of Israel. Yesterday, 18 Knesset members joined forces in an emergency session called It's Time for Equality to urge the government to recognize non-Orthodox movements in Israel. The invitation to the event, which was signed by 6 Knesset members, stated that, quote, it's time for a pact of brotherhood rather than a pact of blood among all the communities of the Jewish people. Some of the attendees included Yesh Atid chairman Yair Lapid, Likud member Amir Ohana, and Meretz Party chairwoman Tamar Zandberg. Not surprisingly, there were no representatives from the Orthodox or ultra-Orthodox parties. Rachel Azaria of the Kulanu Party said she was hopeful that the non-Orthodox movements would be recognized in Israel, but that we needed to be patient and allow it to happen on its own. She stated, quote, revolutions don't happen here in the Knesset, they happen first among the people. The executive director of the Reform movement in Israel, Rabbi Gilad Kariv, said he plans to draft new legislation to demand full equality and recognition. Lapid claimed that Jews cannot enjoy freedom of religion in Israel and, quote, so long as women cannot pray at the Western Wall and there's no change in the conversion law, we're doing an injustice to ourselves. Israel currently does not recognize marriages performed by Reform and conservative rabbis or conversions that take place under a non-Orthodox rabbi's supervision. Amidst the deepening rift between Russia and Israel, Putin has canceled the November 11th meeting in Paris with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The ties between the two leaders have progressively gotten worse since September 17th, with the accidental downing of the Russian Il-20 plane by Syrian forces, which resulted in the deaths of 17 Russian crew members. Russia has continued to falsely claim that the IDF was responsible for the incident, despite the facts shown by the Israeli Defense Forces that prove otherwise. Many Israeli authorities believe that the Russians used that incident as an excuse to arm Syria with the S-300 anti-aircraft missile system. This claim is supported by the fact that the Russian government attempted to deliver the same system to Syria back in April. At the time, Russia didn't follow through with the plan due to Israel's outcry over the matter. Many Israeli authorities believe that the Russians have their own agenda and are using this incident with the downed plane as a scapegoat to carry out the plans they initiated months ago in order to dominate Syria. The Russian-Israeli ties weren't always so grim, but have taken a turn for the worse. During the meeting with Trump and Putin at the Helsinki summit back in July, Trump stated that he, Putin, and Netanyahu were on the same page, and that Putin is a big fan of Israel and a strong supporter of Netanyahu. However, the Russian Foreign Ministry, Sergei Lavrov, has said that tensions are high between Israel and Russia. The Russian embassy in Israel retweeted Lavrov's statement, in which he said that Israeli military operations won't resolve Israeli security concerns, but rather will cause increased regional tensions. Late last month, Israeli Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman completely rejected the Russian demands that Israel must restrict airstrikes in Syria. And Prime Minister Netanyahu has stated on several occasions that Israel will do whatever is necessary to prevent Iran's entrenchment in Syria. Meanwhile, Israeli Minister Zev Elkin just stated that if Syria hits Israeli jets, Israel will strike back, and that it doesn't make any difference if they're run by Russian teams. He says that the S-300 systems have destabilized the region, and Russia made a huge mistake in shipping them to Syria. A TV crew from Israel's Channel 2 went to the coastal enclave in Gaza to film violence from the other side of the border. They documented what really goes on behind the scenes. Huge billboards with Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas's face covered with blood, with the words, whoever punishes us doesn't represent us. Huge structures built by Hamas in the form of rockets that are aimed at Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. Store owners in Gaza saying that although there are plenty of supplies, most people don't have the money to purchase anything other than basic goods, and there's a 53% unemployment rate. Many people have gone broke in Gaza, while others have been arrested and imprisoned for not returning debts to pay their bills. According to one Gazan, the Palestinian refugee organization UNRWA, which continues to receive millions of dollars in funding from countries worldwide, only gives flour to the Gazan residents. The Great March of Return rioters, which have been protesting since March 30th, are actually members of Hamas military wing Izz al-Din al-Qassem. This unit organizes violence and brings equipment to the security fence. Another Gazan told reporters that, quote, Hamas is the only group which profits from the violent demonstrations. The families of so-called martyrs who murder Jews receive $3,000 from Iran, while Hamas pays $100 a month to children who show up at the violent riots. However, despite all the criminal activity going on in Gaza, facilitated by Hamas, many people in Gaza still support Hamas and the war against Israel. Israeli President Rivlin spoke at an Ethiopian holiday celebration in Jerusalem, where he condemned discrimination based on race. He said, quote, citizens of Israel will not be party to discrimination on the basis of skin color. We're brothers and sisters, and anyone who tries to undermine that has no place among the tribes of Israel. Rivlin mentioned the Barkhan winery case, in which Ethiopian employees were banned from coming into contact with wine in order to satisfy strict kosher licensing laws. At the time, some ultra-Orthodox members expressed doubts as to whether the Ethiopian workers were really Jewish. The incident caused a fierce backlash in many communities throughout Israel, and Israel's chief rabbi called the ban, quote, pure racism. Rivlin also discussed the efforts to release an Ethiopian prisoner, Avera Mengistu, being held in captivity by Hamas in Gaza. He crossed into Gaza in 2014 and has been missing ever since. Rivlin also made mention of the fact that he was the first ever Israeli president to visit Ethiopia. He maintains that he's hopeful that the ties between Israel and Ethiopia will continue to grow over the coming years.
That's all for now. Follow us on Facebook at Israel English News and on Twitter at ILTV News. I'm Yael Shear, and thanks for watching.